This is going to be a very informal panel, and we're talking about the A of CAMS. Can anyone tell me what that is? Nobody. Jim. Automation. That's it. Could be awesomeness, because that's all part of DevOps also. But it's automation. And what we're talking about is moving from chore. How many of you think that doing redundant tasks over and over and over again is like a chore? I do, right? I'm super lazy, so I automate as much as I can. And so by automating, how does that transform your service delivery from a chore into a competitive advantage? Does everyone sort of agree that by having automation in your pipeline can give you a competitive advantage? Delivering products faster, is that a good thing? Yes? Awesome. All right, very good. So my name is Sam Fell. I'm joined here by our CTO of Electric Cloud, Anders Wahlgren. And so he and I are going to be sort of leading this panel of quite a few very well-versed practitioners as well as thought leaders in this space. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Manish. Manish, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Manish Agarwal from Intel Corporation, and we are doing the continuous delivery and DevOps for about 3 years now.
All right, great. Thanks, Manish. Amy DeMartine with Forrester. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Amy DeMartine. I'm a senior analyst with Forrester Research. I am the ops part of DevOps. My dev counterpart is here somewhere. His name is Kurt Bittner. We are here in force, so yeah.
Awesome. All right, well, welcome. Eddie Garcia, introduce yourself, please. Can you share the mic? Perfect.
Sure. My name is Eddie Garcia. I'm a consultant with Bluware. I have 20 plus years of build, release, and automation experience.
Awesome, welcome. And last but not least, from Motor City, Darnell. Darnell, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Darnell McMurrian from QuickenLoans. We've been doing CD, CI, all of it really for quite some time, but now we're getting more of the consolidating cross-platform and seeing where we can make more efficiencies.
Awesome. All right, great. So let's go ahead and get started. To get started, Forrester, Amy actually published a wave, a Forrester wave. Have people heard of a Forrester wave before? Anybody show of hands, right? So Forrester wave, it helps to define for the market technologies or movements or things that are basically very useful to folks like us who are trying to get our jobs done. And she did a wave on application release automation as part of a broader, I would say, a broader context of modern service delivery. All right, and so can you share with us and the rest of the audience here, what is your opinion, what is Forrester or your opinion on modern service delivery?
Right. So modern service delivery is all about how to win, serve, and retain our customers, right? That's why we're here, is to do that better. And to do that better, we believe that you, through practices like DevOps, need to create a continuous delivery pipeline so that you can deliver at the pace the business requests. So does it demand 2 seconds? Probably not, but it probably demands faster than what you're doing today.
Excellent. All right. So that's sort of the context around the discussion, is trying to get products out to market so that you don't go out of business, right? Basically, that's where we find ourselves. If you are a non-trivial software business, and everybody is a non-trivial software business, you need to make sure that you're better at doing this. And so I guess the first question I'm going to ask the folks on the panel is, are we there yet? Have we sort of reached automation nirvana? Or do you have everything totally automated? Eddie, what are your thoughts?
I think that everybody pretty much knows we're not there yet, right? Every company is in a different state, and let's just say you're never there, right? Because the landscape is changing, the tools are changing, and I think one of the biggest challenges is that really it's a cultural thing, and you don't want your culture to devolve back into bad practices. You constantly have to keep that culture on the edge of pushing the edge.
Absolutely. Great. All right. Thank you. Manish.
So I would say that the answer to this question is of two parts. The first part is that we should believe that we can be there. Because until we start believing that we can achieve 100% automation, then our efforts will be half-hearted and we will never be achieve that. After having said that, we are trying that for 3 years. We have made a lot of progress. We have released far more often than what we could in the past. Our customers are happier than what they were in the past, but we are not there as yet. But
Yeah.
we are on the right path, definitely.
Yeah. One of the things that Manish talks a lot about, the work that he does to automate the testing over at Intel. You tell me if I'm lying, because I'm good at that. So it's not lying, it's just I'm not very smart. So the work that you do to automate stuff, the testing, really the outcome, the output for you, and you talked about this just now, is having your customers happy with the quality of the software.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on quality.
So if you remember what Amy just said, we should be able to make deliveries quicker and faster, aligning with what our customer needs are. The only thing that I want to add to that is we should be able to deliver the software with known quality. Because anybody can deliver software faster. You can make deliveries day in and day out. But the challenge is, do I know what I'm delivering? Does my customer know what he's getting? And that's where the full automation helps you. Because every time you ship something out, you will know the quality. You will know where you stand.
Right. And you've known all the different gates that it passed through, all the different quality assurance gates that it's passed to. And as Anders always likes to say, sort of automation is auditing, right? Because it's going to follow that path, regardless of what you want it to do. It's going to follow in that path, even if it runs itself into a brick wall, right? Because that's what you've told it to do. So excellent. All right, Manish, thank you. Darnell, what are your thoughts on whether or not we're there? Look at all these people that want to give you a microphone. We want to hear what you have to say.
Well, I agree with everything, really. We should never lose sight of the fact that we will never be there. Technology changes day in, day out. I mean, look at Docker. Docker's come around, and everyone's going Docker crazy and virtualization crazy, and at some point, it's all going to come back and, in full circle. And not to mention the growth and explosion of new technologies that are out there.
Yeah.
All the different languages that are emerging, Groovy, Go, you name it, it's there. Even Erlang's coming back.
Are you seeing a lot of those new technologies getting adopted inside of Quicken Loans?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We are, as we say, engineered to amaze, so we constantly are looking for whatever will help us in whatever advantage.
And then you have to sort of take all these different pockets of innovation inside of Quicken Loans, and you have to try and figure out how to make that a standard, repeatable, predictable process.
Right. And in a timely manner.
And in a timely manner. And how do you do that, right? That's a challenge. Absolutely. All right, Darnell, thank you. Amy, is the market there yet? Are we there yet? Are you there yet? Have you arrived at DevOps and automation? Everything's good? Anyone? No. Okay, good. Right? We can always do better. Amy,
Good. That agrees with my data too.
Perfect.
Yes.
All right, you guys are a good representative sample.
Yes. So in our recent DevOps survey, 38% of the respondents didn't even know if customer experience was measured in their company. So if we're really trying to win, serve, and retain customers, that's a key piece of information that we are missing. 57% said their business was either dissatisfied or highly dissatisfied with the release cadence. And yet only 14% said that they had full release automation. So on the plus side, we have a huge growth opportunity to improve.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Amy. Anders, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still in the early days, really, in some ways, or we probably wouldn't all be here at the conference. I think doing this is kind of has two big challenges to it, which is part of why it takes people a while to get to it. One is culture. That's sort of pretty obvious, but it's a very different or difficult thing to deal with, because it often means reorganizing teams, changing reporting structures, all of that kind of stuff. And the second is architecture. To do this stuff well, you really have to architect your product and your pipeline and all of that stuff so that it can be automated, and that's difficult to do. If you're gonna go for a microservices approach, you may have a monolithic application you've got to break up, or you may have lots of manual testing that you're gonna have a difficult time, getting automated. But that stuff has to happen. That it's almost mandatory at this point that a software organization get into that mode of operating, or you'll be left behind. So.
Yeah, exactly.
And to add to that, during the process, you will feel the challenge. You will have to address that challenge where individuals feel that if they have said it's working, then you have to believe them. But you have to convince them that it's not about trust. It's about having a common platform where a tool says it's working and not an individual, because that's more reliable. That is more trackable.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Very good. So understanding that we're not there yet, how does automation help to boost innovation, right? You talked a little bit about this just now. Put yourself, don't worry about the small things, worry about the big things. Why do you want to worry about automating the big things first, right? How does that help you? Let me go back to Eddie and find out, how does it help inside of Bluware or inside of the companies that you consult for,
Sure.
for having automation?
So I would kind of I would take a different approach. I say really the smallest pieces are the ones that you have to automate and get a really solid foundation. And that's where, once you have the smallest pieces automated and you've got a nice bedrock to stand on and build on, that's where the boost of innovation comes from. Now you can start building and building more and more automation on top of that. And you don't lose time going back, having to kind of like spinning plates and having to go back here. This one's slowing down, this one's coming up. You have the base is there, and you'll be able to build and move forward and boost innovation. I could give you some examples of that when we can.
I'd love to hear an example. How is it innovate? Kind of unlock some innovation where you are.
Sure. So we've had a lot of graphical user interface tests. And we do my current customer does a lot of seismic interpretation software, so it's all graphical. It's legacy. It's like 40-year-old code, so not a lot of unit tests. But they hit a wall in that there was like 137 tests that pushed the product. It took 16 hours to run in a linear fashion. So we took that, we broke it down, we made a single test and made it using Electric Commander, actually Electric Flow. We're able to parallelize that, and now we can just tweak the knob. We want more machines. We want to take it less time. We spread it across more machines. We've gotten it down to basically a 90-minute test run from like 12 hours. So but you got to start with the basics.
Right, and that faster cycle time, again, back to the 3 ways of DevOps, that's great feedback loops for the developers so they can innovate more and they can actually do what they do best, which is sort of create. They're like artists, right? You don't want the artist going and getting his own paint. Right? You want to have the paint ready for him so he can just start creating. Awesome, thanks.
So in terms of innovation, I think it helps in 2 ways. First, in terms of having developers get to do more. And why is that? Because the sooner you are able to provide feedback to the developers, the faster they will be able to resolve your issues. Because the more time the code spends in the SCM and the more time you take to provide the feedback, the developers are also human. They will forget about it. They will take longer to resolve your issues. So the number one advantage is that we are giving them early feedback so that they are able to resolve the issues faster. Now, second thing is the QA team. The QA team in our organization, in our group, we realize that every release is taking close to 7 man days to ship it out of the door. Now that is 7 man days lost where we did not develop a single test case. But if you have the automation in place, then those QA team members, they are innovating. They are adding more test cases. They are giving you more ways to be able to measure your quality. So it's a win-win for both.
Nice, excellent, thank you. All right, Darnell, how about you at Quicken Loans? How's it helping?
Well, it's it's helping actually a lot. So I'm going to take it from an infrastructure perspective. Thinking about how long it takes to provision a server, get the OS on there, get the server set up to actually deploy the app to, and taking all of that down to minutes, maybe even seconds if you're really good, but allowing then the teams to, instead of focusing on waiting for their infrastructure to be ready, they actually have the time to now go and innovate. And really, once they're ready, they're done to deploy, they have the infrastructure ready and waiting for them. They can test out the things, see if they like it, see what they're doing. If they don't like it, they can just blow it away and we can start all over again. And
so you've implemented a lot of that self-service sort of provisioning at Quicken Loans.
Yes.
Your developers, do they love that?
Oh, they love getting their hands on the server.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stories Anders shares about someone had outsourced all the work for getting servers in, and it took them how many weeks to get
7 weeks.
7 weeks to get a virtual machine provisioned, which seems a little excessive. So awesome. All right, Darnell, thank you very
I
much.
can relate to that.
Yeah, right. It's crazy, right? It's just you push the button, right? But I guess you can't. You need a lot of red tape to push the button, apparently. Amy, what are your thoughts on this?
Excitement. So I think it boosts innovation in two ways, and this kind of hits on what Manish was saying. So your products and services are always going to have an expectation gap. And in fact, customer expectations are rising. It's not just your industry that you're competing with, it is the expectations that all the other industries are creating. So Quicken Loans may be doing a great job and customers love them. That same experience then will translate to Intel. Hey, I want that same experience. I want that same kind of user experience. Why can't I get that over there? So you're constantly going to have this expectation gap. And if you automate and you're able to release faster in smaller chunks, pair it up with agile methodologies, then you're able to match a gap, measure, test a gap, great, deliver it, test again. Did we meet it? Did we miss it? Go again and again and again. And that's really the goal, is to get very fast at responding to these customer expectation gaps, because like I said, they're coming from everywhere. So you need to be able to respond very quickly. But the second thing is, a lot of the clients that I talk to don't even have their release process documented. And when you automate a process, you have documented it. And hopefully what you're seeing is a lot of process debt that you can get rid of. Any process that lives over time is going to get, we had this critical failure, better add a manual approval or a manual check. We got to get human eyes on something. And over time, you get a lot of bloating in your release processes. And so when you have it documented and you can say, okay, do we still really need this? Can we get rid of it? So it's actually getting rid of a lot of process debt as well.
Interesting. So there's technical debt and there's process debt. I'd never really thought about that, but it makes a lot of sense. When you're trying to architect your applications and do continuous delivery, there are trade-offs that you have to make from a pipeline perspective, from an application perspective, and from a process perspective as well. That's interesting. Great. Anders.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to, have humans do the things that humans are good at and let the machines do everything else, right? And humans are really kind of crappy at typing the right command into the right window at the right time, and rebooting the right server, and not skipping 2 lines ahead in the Word document for the deploy instructions. And, oops, I did the wrong thing. Now we got to go back. Get the human out of the loop. We're just so bad at that stuff, and we don't leave a good record of what we're doing the whole time, right? A log file scrolls by. Somewhere in there was an error, but you didn't see it because you're not Superman. So using tools for all of this stuff to capture the output, analyze the output, create a record of what happened, not only makes your team happier, but makes the auditors happier and all of those kinds of things as well. So it's just an all-around good thing.
Excellent. All right, very good. Any last thoughts on this? We'll move on to the next one. So automation and quality, one of the things, Manish has talked about this a lot, and this slide was sort of in here for you. I don't know if anybody caught that. We had an errant bug go across the screen there. It wasn't supposed to happen, but it's kind of neat. How did that get? It's a bug. There's a bug in my PowerPoint. So how does automation increase quality, and not only the actual quality of it, but the provability of that quality? And so let's start over here. Let's start with Amy.
All right. So really, when you talk about taking an application, for example, say a web app, from development through testing to into production, it's really all about, and there goes that bug again, it's really all about fidelity. Are you moving that same exact thing from development into testing into production? Even configuration management, if you are able to get the same system configuration through the different environments, it solves a whole host of problems, especially the "it worked on my machine" problem that everybody seems to run into. So it's really about fidelity and moving it consistently through those different environments, and that's going to increase quality of your entire application. And as well as create an audit trail, you know exactly what went where, so if something breaks, you can say, all right, what changed last?
Don't do that again.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Avoid doing that. Okay, excellent. Darnell, what are your thoughts on this, quality?
I agree with everything. One of the things as well is automating your test, right? We had a tradition of doing manual testing. And manual testing, like you said, it's not repeatable. You may miss a line, a step somewhere in there, but then by taking all of those things, even if they're in a spreadsheet and we can read from it and make an automation script for you, taking that and creating the ability to now make it repeatable. When you have configuration management in place, you can literally spin up a new system, run configuration management, run your tests, deploy your app, and make sure everything is the way that it needs to be. And that's huge when it comes to moving your application from environment to environment to environment. You need to scale out to whatever your needs are, and knowing that because you've increased the quality there and the automation, it's all going to work for you.
It's that fidelity again that you come back to, right? The fidelity of the environment, the fidelity of the artifact, the fidelity of the process. If you can get those things nailed, you have more repeatability. Awesome. Thanks, Darnell. Manish, you're the quality guy.
So, I can speak on this topic for hours. How does automation increase quality? So there is a problem with humans. And the good thing is that the machines don't have that problem. And the problem is that humans get bored and humans get tired. And the good thing is that machines do not have this problem. So they can do the same thing over and over again without missing a line, without missing a step, and with the trail as to what they did. That's what you need to measure the quality. And once you are able to measure the quality, that's the only time when you can think about improving the quality. Because if you ask any developer, his code has no bugs, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a developer who says my code has bugs? I have not seen one. So once you are able to measure the quality, that's when you can collectively plan to improve the quality. And because you have the automation in place, you have the time as well to invest to improve that quality.
Yeah.
That's where it helps.
That's great. Now, and you're using Electric Flow to help automate and orchestrate all these tests that you're doing,
we are
right?
using Electric Commander, now Electric Flow,
Yeah.
to automate, to achieve end-to-end automation nirvana, the word that you used,
Yeah.
right? And hopefully we'll be there someday.
Yeah. Well, you're getting always moving closer, right?
Yes.
Dividing it by half every time. So how many test cycles are you running? How many tests do you have as part of your normal suite? What does that
So-
look like?
The count is, okay, I don't know how to put a number towards the test, but there are test suites that run on hourly basis. There are test suites that run on a daily basis. There are some tests which are run on a per release basis, something that are run on a weekly basis.
Okay.
So it depends what is your objective, what is it that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And for different purpose, you have different kind of test suites that are executed to measure the quality at that point in time.
And they're all being orchestrated by Electric Flow, and the further you get towards production, the more intensive the testing,
Right.
more time consuming the testing.
So just to do a basic sanity testing, you will have only a handful of tests because you cannot you cannot afford to run all the suite on all the builds.
Yeah.
But over a period of time, over a period of short time, which maximum can be a week and can be a different number for different organizations, you should be able to run your complete suite.
Now, did you turn tests off as you started this process? Did you find tests that you tried to automate and they were always just broken? And so you said, okay, well, let's turn those off until we can fix the tests?
Yes,
Yeah.
we had to do that, and we have evolved some solutions around it, and that's what we call as PWKE. That's the term that we coined.
Okay.
Passed with known exception.
Okay.
And what it means is that, oh, this guy was broken last week, it is broken this week also. So at least we did not deteriorate further, which is still a good state to be in.
That's known quality. It's not high quality, but it's known quality. Yeah.
So people say that QA process, the job of the QA team is to improve quality. I say no, they only measure quality. Mm-hmm. The quality introduction happens at the design level, even before at the architecture level, at the developer level.
Right.
QA team is only measuring it. And these tools are helping you measure faster.
Great. Excellent. All right. Eddie, what are your thoughts on software quality?
There's definitely want to automate your tests and the quality itself, but just as important is gathering all of those metrics in very usable ways and have that completely automated. You don't want people, with a pivot table and trying to get those reports completely automated so you have full exposure as to what the health is at any given moment. And the other piece I was going to say is you can use automation. We use Electric Command or Electric Flow because the nature of graphical tests, they're kind of glitchy. And so we have automatic reruns on our tests. And then if we see that we keep data and we go back across builds and we say, hey, this particular test, well, we have 3 reruns. It always passes eventually, but it's glitchy. So we have a list of glitchy tests that then feed back into the QA department, and then they have to go investigate why is it failing, and then we've actually been able to eliminate a lot of those.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, interesting. So you're using that automation to re-automate something.
Yeah, to create a feedback loop with QA to
Within
say,
your automation.
These tests need work, they need hardening, and then we feed them back.
Excellent. All right, very good. Anders, any?
Yeah, that's actually what I was just about to sort of say. As you spend kind of less time babysitting your tests, you get to spend more time analyzing the output and not just looking for green or red. But if you have a flaky test that plagues you, you can start to look at it. Is it a particular platform it happens? Is it a particular time of day when it happens? Is it you can really start to dig into those things and actually fix those problems, which otherwise you don't really have time to do because oops, it failed again, let's move on, is kind of the mode that you get into if you don't have the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. All right, so moving on now from sort of the testing aspect and getting it out into production or getting it actually deployed to be able to test. So we talked a little bit about this already, but how does this automation, how have you guys used Electric Flow to help you sort of simplify these deployments into these different environments? And what was it about the product that said, yeah, this is the one that we should be sort of using for the complex use case that we have? And I'll start with you, Eddie.
Okay, well, I don't have a lot to add on this. Our deployments were fairly okay, but we were using another product and another means to deploy. And so we would be driven from a Windows machine and we would SSH to a Linux machine and we would kick off some other script and sometimes the permissions weren't there. So moving to where we had agents at every place that we were going to deploy to and having them pull and be able to rework instead of having it kind of a blind push methodology, that helped a lot. And when we moved to Commander, we definitely moved to that model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're a lot more consistency of those
A lot
deployments.
more consistent. Yep.
Interesting. Okay, great. Are you guys taking advantage of the artifact repository in the platform as well?
Not currently, because we have other tools that depend on things being in a specific place.
Okay.
But we're moving towards getting everything into one.
As long as you have a repository for everybody, that's the most important practice.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Thanks, Eddie. Manish, how about you?
So deployment is not one of the use cases that we are trying to solve with Commander, but taking a clue from what Eddie said, we are also using Commander to make sure that we are able to verify the exact software that gets shipped out of the door, and not your copy or my copy and my machine versus your machine kind
Right.
of thing. So it is that common copy against which all the blocks, all the modules are verified against before we ship it out. So that's the internal deployment, we can say, which has been made consistent by Electric Commander.
Right. And so when you're creating those builds, the binaries, and you're doing the testing on them, you're bringing those binaries forward? Or do you, for production, do you do sort of the production build and deploy brand new bits?
No, it's the same thing. It's the same tarball which we use for our verification, the one that gets shipped out.
Right. Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
It's the same flags, same platform, everything exactly the same.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Don't miss anything out.
Great. And Darnell, how about you? I know you guys are keenly interested in deployment automation. How are you going on your journey?
Very well, actually. We've been able to. It's helped in a lot of different ways. One of the ways is we have .NET technology in our environment, and it lives within GitHub Enterprise on premise. But one of the challenges, because it's .NET, we use TFS heavily as our build system. And there wasn't a great integration between TFS and GitHub. So with Commander, which is now Flow, we were able to fill the gap, able to create some automation around your GitHub repository that's going to pull your code, tell TFS, hey, here's a code that you need to build, and then actually just trigger the entire process, which eventually feeds back into Electric Flow for deployment.
Oh, excellent. So that information is then the flow of that information is coming back into the system,
Yes.
and you're
Yep.
you're using that to trigger other actions within the platform.
Yeah, from there, we can actually trigger, okay, it's built, it's run all of your tests. We can take everything from your unit test. We can see what the quality of that is before we deploy to anywhere. We can now trigger continuous deployments to tests. So
Right.
you really don't have to worry about anything besides I checked in code.
So the developer checks in the code, and all of a sudden there's an environment stood up with the right stuff for him to go and bang against and have his friend look at and do whatever.
Exactly.
Excellent.
QA gets the code faster. Everyone can see, even if you're the business, then you need to see in the test environment, see what's going on. You can really just go right to that environment and see the code within minutes.
Do you have your support people? Are they doing the same thing where they say, hey, somebody's reporting a problem with this version of the software, give me an environment that's got that so I can
Yes.
reproduce it?
Yes.
Yeah. What a time saver that is, right? Instead
Oh,
of
it's
going-
been fantastic. And then having that complete traceability from, what commit happened, what build, where it got deployed. We can literally trace back and see, okay, where at what point did we break down in the process, or was there a problem with the code? Was there something with the automation scripts? Where are we having troubles at?
Right, to be able to look back at that. Yeah, J. Paul Reed, I think, is giving a whole talk on blameless postmortems and being able to go back and look. I would urge you all to watch that one. But it's so important to be able to go back and say, it's okay, that wasn't so good, we can do it better, and then do it better, right? That's an important part of it. Amy, what are your thoughts on this? How does automation simplify deployments?
So if people aren't doing it, I would encourage you highly to think about your deployments in a modular fashion so that you're able to reuse parts. So for example, web servers. If you are creating a web server, by hook or crook, convince those developers that what they really need is this reusable part, because it will really increase the ability to have confidence. You can work with security and risk folks to really harden that web server, make sure it's great, so that by the time it gets out into the world, you're protected.
Nice. All right, and Anders, Mr. Automation.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that's sort of been alluded to, but I'll sort of call it out specifically, is, deploying into production shouldn't be the first time you test your production or your deployment processes, right? And it typically isn't, right? But engineers do deployments, QA does deployments, ops does pre-prod deployments, all of that kind of stuff. And it would be nice, and I, this is something you can do in Flow, to sort of have one process that you use to deploy into whatever environments you're going into, whether it's for dev testing or QA testing or production, so that you aren't trying your production deployment process for the first time when you deploy into production. So that you really treat your, to some extent, your deployment process as part of the product in a way, right? Process as code, if you will, and so that they can kind of live together. And it's not a huge surprise to the ops folks what's coming down the pike, because they can see it, and they can see changes in the application model, and hey, you've got a new messaging layer, so I guess we need to figure out how to run that, and all that kind of stuff, instead of having to kind of crack open a WAR file and figure out what's new, which is, unfortunately something that a lot of people still have to do.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I remember Scott from CSG last year, he talked about practice days, the practice team and the game day team, and how the practice team, you got the QA folks and the developers, and they're doing deployments all the time, and then they say, okay, time to have the production guys, the game day team, do it, and the game day team, they've never seen the code before, and all of a sudden it's up to them to try and do it, where these guys have thousands of iterations of getting it up and running successfully, not any problems. So having that same process across all those environments is super, super helpful. So how does that then empower these release managers to be able to move this code through this whole life cycle? If you are doing it the same across all these different environments, how does that empower either a release manager or the business to make sure that they're doing the right things? So Anders, I guess I'll start with you.
I mean, in a lot of cases, it sort of obviates the need for a lot of manual steps, right? You don't need to have the meeting on, did we pass all the security tests, or the meeting on, are we doing the right thing for privacy, all of that. You just bake that into your pipeline. And really that review process should just be, you look at the screen and it's green and you're ready to go,
Yeah.
right? As opposed to, We got to go through these 600, cases. Did we do this one? Yes. What was the, all of that kind of stuff. So it takes a lot of that inefficiency and a lot of the slack out of the process, and really, allows you to focus on getting the functionality out, not on the kind of the minutia of the process so much.
Amy, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, release managers typically are essentially project managers when the process is manual, and they're taking the process through its paces. They're getting all the approvals. They're making sure the testing was done. Is it of quality? Can it go to the next step? And really what automation does is it elevates the release manager job to really be a release engineer, where they are thinking about, okay, what do we want this to look like from infrastructure all the way to the application and all the configurations in between? And so they become engineers, no longer managers of a process. And typically when the process is so manual, they're really overloaded with just moving the release. They're really not worried about how to make it better. They're really not worried about fidelity, for example, or security or any of the other good things that suddenly they're freed up to do.
Yeah, excellent. All right, thank you. Darnell.
Yeah, I think Anders touched on this a little bit. So it's about coordinating, right? You have these release managers that have to go across multiple teams, trying to coordinate what versions are you deploying here and when and everything. You have teams that aren't even on the same iterations, and then having the visibility of everything that everyone's deploying, all the versions, and being able to literally just say, okay, I'm going to take this slice of the application, and this is what we're doing. And having, again, traceability. You know exactly what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Manish, are you guys using, is this helpful to your team, the fact that you get visibility for them as to what's been tested and how and where?
Yes. So a critical question that we need to answer every time we have to make a release is, are we ready to branch? And what it means is that you're on the main line, developers are showing in code day in, day out, but are they done as yet? Or are they at a logical point where we can say that, okay, enough is enough. We are not going to take any more features. We're only going to take bug fixes. And whatever you have delivered so far is of known quality. And automation helps us achieve that, because now, as Amy said, we don't have to run around asking people, have you done that? Have you done that? And we know what different component versions are being tested in the current automation system of mine. And if my sanity suite is passed, or if whatever checklist I prepared, that this is my acceptance criteria is successful, is green, then I'm good to go. So that reduces the cycle, and that helps me deliver faster.
Nice. All right, cool. Eddie.
So I'll use a concrete example on this. From my days on Mac Office, we had 14 languages we had to deliver on, and English and Japanese happen in the US, 12 other ones happen in Ireland. There's a 3 to 4 week delay between when English comes out and the other ones get tested, because they don't want to spin their wheels on code that's bad. Right. And so, and there was always this lag, and our releases would be trailing. So using heavy automation, we were able to bring that down to building every single language in-house with enough machines in 12 hours. So what the translation teams, localization teams would do is then they would put dummy strings in place as placeholders, and they could test whatever. They were accountable now to deliver translations on pace with fixes.
Wow.
Instead of saying, just throw it to us at the end and we'll have this chunk of time to play with it.
Right.
Now, what does that do for the release manager? I mean, it does a lot. And one thing that I think is a bad practice that happens towards releases, and I think you mentioned something like this, I call it off-roading. Essentially, you're testing this process over and over and over all day for, depending on how long your release cycle is, like Mac Office is maybe a year.
Right.
And then we get to the end, and it's a 22-hour build process, and you're like, we don't have time for that. So let's cram this fix in, we'll short circuit, you hand do some stuff here. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys,
Yeah.
We've tested this process for a year. We know it works. And now at game time, let's start scrambling, let's start doing some last minute stuff. So that's where it really empowers the release managers. Like, I have confidence that we can do this in a measurable time frame and with known quality.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up the last topic for us to talk about is how does that help with if you're a information security officer or chief security officer at a company and you're worried about compliance, right? Intel, finance, right? You guys probably worry a little bit about making sure it's auditable, making sure the tests were done. You don't want to ship a bunch of chips, find out that you got to call them all back. You don't want to give someone a loan and then find out, that guy there's no way he can ever pay us back, right? That's not good for either of your businesses. So how does automation help in those instances to make sure that you're checking all the boxes without making it too onerous for the developers? I'll start with Eddie.
So I'm not heavy on the security part.
Great.
But can I co-op this time in case we're going to cut off the last one, which I think is what do we automate next?
Oh, what do you automate? No, we'll have time for the what do we automate
Okay,
next.
well then I'll cede my time to the gentleman to my right.
All right, fabulous. All right, Manish, what do you got?
So, not security as such, but we have a critical requirement because one time in the past, the customers complained that there were some developer names, there were some other customer names, and there were some not so nice words written in the code.
Oh, whoops.
So, which is like a big oops. So what we did was that we automated that checking. We added a bunch of scripts which scan through my code day in, day out, that every time anybody is too pissed off writing his code and add something to the code which he does not want to add, but just add it in fit of anger at the moment, it gets caught and it never gets shipped out of the door.
Interesting. So you've got like the profanity filters on the website. You've got them for your code.
Yes.
That's a rambunctious bunch you got over there at Intel. Dung, dung, dung.
So it's like,
Swear words inside. All
this
right.
can never happen again.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So, but that actually happened where you had that stuff shipped out.
It happened one time in the past, then it repeated, and that's when it's like, no, we cannot let this happen again.
So you had to create an automated process to eliminate all the profanity. There's a tweet I know someone's going to put out there.
Because when you're about to make a release, the all focus is to functionally verify everything.
Right.
And these are some of the things which are important, but not super critical. So these will be some of the things that will get drop off your plate
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have them automated, then there is no effort going on there. But it will, at the same time, you will make sure that it is not getting shipped out of the door with those things.
Right. Especially when you're at the final hour, as you mentioned, and you want to try and get it out. Don't go around the whole process just to get the product out, because then you've just, you've ruined all the work that you've done up until that point. All right on. Darnell, what do you got for security and compliance and auditability? Does that matter to Quicken Loans?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Quicken Loans, a financial institute, I'd say we probably have 4 audits a year, if not more.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have traceability from end to end is huge. We have auditors that like to look on a server, look at the actual binary, find out what version that is, and then go back and see who requested it, what code changes were made to it. Is there any PIIR, personal information?
Right. Person identifiable information.
Thank you. So looking at all of that and having, again, that visibility right away, because everything was automated, you're able to actually capture all of that along the way. It's been huge for us.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to be huge.
Nice. All right, great. Amy, what are you hearing out there for folks? How is automation? Do you recommend automation to folks who are trying to?
I do recommend automation.
That's good.
So a few data points here. 47% of web applications today have unprotected file issues due to web server misconfiguration. So if we are able to create this single version of a web server and have it move through our environment correctly, work with our security and risk buddies, we can actually close this gap, because I can just hear the moo-ha-ha-ha of all those malicious attackers thinking the world is my oyster, because I can attack these 47% of web servers out there.
Wow.
If dev is the department of anything goes, and ops is the department of no, security is the department of persistent nagging. And so it's very easy to tune them out, but they are a little twitchy for a good reason. So if we look at code today, 90% of modern applications are made with third-party software. A lot of that is open source. 1 out of every 16 open source downloads has a known vulnerability. So that means in your code today, you have known vulnerabilities. Out of the 97% of the exposed vulnerabilities, the ones that have actually been exploited, these came back to 10 known CVEs. So common vulnerabilities and exploitations, and this is going to really, it shocked me. It comes down to these 10, 8 of which have been fixed for 10 to 12 years.
Wow.
So the problem with open source is it never dies. It's always out there. Your developers probably very unconsciously are sucking in this code. Now, why is this important? It's important because once you know there's a vulnerability in a particular part of an application, knowing where it went in which application, and then being able to quickly release to fix that vulnerability is super important. It becomes your best offense in trying to close these vulnerabilities.
Nice. Thank you, Amy. All right, Anders.
And sort of think about that in the context of the Internet of Things, right? Security vulnerability fixing and patching is going to get even more important than it is now, right? There was a bunch of car recalls that have happened recently for various sort of security and emissions reasons and those kinds of things. And the ability to turn around fixes is really dependent on your cycle time, right? Because effectively a lot of these fixes are just tweak the version number on some dependency, rebuild and retest, right? And there really is no reason why that shouldn't be a matter of hours as opposed to days or weeks or even years, right? And having that, having security as a feature, not as an afterthought, is pretty important. And I would say performance is kind of in the same bucket, which is you don't want to do your performance testing at the end of your development cycle,
right,
because you probably can't do much to fix it at that point. And most performance regressions are not like one check-in that made you 10% slower. They were 10 check-ins that made you 1% slower.
Yeah.
So it's as with security, performance is also one of those things that you want to be you want to be shifting to the left as much as possible.
Awesome. All right, last question. I know Eddie has a comment on it, so you want to talk about it. So what's next? Where's automation going to help you next, Eddie? What are you looking at?
A lot of teams I work on and a lot of teams out there just have very few QA resources. Right, so going back to automate the fundamentals, make sure they're rock solid, and then you can build things on top of that. So I've mentioned this solution that we've built, and we've got these GUI tests, and they retry and all of that. We've got like maybe 3 QA people, and they have to go chase down what caused the issue. So by putting it into Electric Commander, and by saving and doing our CIs all day, and saving the build intermediates, I'm working on a system right now, and this is the kind of things that should be next. Working on a system now that it keeps track of what the old breaks were, what the new breaks are, and then knowing that information, it's the middle of the night, nobody's using these machines. Let me go back to all of my CIs, do a binomial search for each of these things, which CI introduced this particular break. And when we get down to quality gated check-ins as opposed to just rolling CIs, I can get down to the specific change that broke this test. And that would happen for integration tests, performance tests, any test. And that's the kind of stuff that's the next level thing. That's what I think, the next level things that you can provide to your teams. And now a 3-person test team becomes equivalent to a 6-person test team because they're not chasing that stuff down manually like they used to.
Right.
So that's where I think it's going.
You've automated their hassles, their chore.
Yeah,
right?
Use your Chore as a platform to then, once you automate that, you can use that as a platform to attack other chores that reach into other parts of the business.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, thanks. Manish, what are you guys going to focus on next with your automation?
So at the place where we are today, it's the QA team which is using the automation. The next step is to use this knowledge to leverage this system that we have in place with the development team. So they are able to leverage the work which the QA team has done, and they are able to leverage the work that they have done, but they are not able to exercise it after their every check-in because there is only 24 hours in the day. So
You should work on that too.
So the automation, the automation can help everybody, not only a subset of the team or only some teams and not everybody. So that's where we are heading next. Next, that everybody should be able to use the same system, and right from the developer to the SEs and FAEs to the end consumers, the look and feel should be the same.
Nice. All right. Darnell, how about you guys? What's Quicken Loan going to do next with the automation that they have?
I think try to be more, let's see, I guess precognitive, precognitive, where we're actually predicting where you might have a bug. Do some deeper analysis of your code, maybe even before you check it in, and try to figure out what are your tendencies, where you trending towards based on either patterns or what your history of how you've written the code, whatever it might be. But then try to figure out and validate and try to get information to you sooner, to you being the developer. So that way it'll help hopefully mitigate more bugs or introducing new bugs going into any environment, right? Even if it's tests. So if I can do the simplest thing is to validate your web config file or any configuration file up front before it ever even gets built, hey, guess what? That saved you a lot of time.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. All right, very cool. And Amy, what are you seeing as like companies are looking at next for automation? Where do they want to go?
Yeah, so today we track e-commerce websites, web apps, and PC applications. And web apps are the clear winner in terms of where people are putting their DevOps efforts. And I agree with Anders. I think Internet of Things is the next. And we start thinking about all of these, self-driving cars, for example, you're going to need a quick fix if there's something wrong with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then final thoughts from you, Anders.
I would say go watch Lucas from HP's presentation when he talks about chat ops, which is a very cool system that they've built for doing ops and ops automation. Basically built it on top of a chat client, and it's pretty cool. It's a great demo to see. So I would encourage you guys to look at that for a peek at kind of what's next in terms of automation. I think it's a pretty cool thing.
Cool use case to be able to do monitoring and self-healing, and then using automation. So that's the end of our time. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us. Thank you very much. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you at the next session. Thanks.